Hello and welcome to this second exploring session, diving feet first into the tragedy of Tancred and Gismunda. It is the later printed edition of a play that was performed in the 1560s. What happened in the 1560s? Someone produced something called Gismund of Salerne, is generally known as from that time. It was a composite work by about 4 or 5 different writers, and then as the front material and the printed version 30 years later, or 30 years later, says, there were so many fan letters coming in saying how much everyone really why was this play being suppressed? You know, it was so good, this thing you did when you were a student 20 years ago. You've got to publish it. You've got to and so one of the group, Robert Wilmot, who wrote Act 5, printed it, had it published because of fan demand, allegedly. And he's slightly changed it, so he's taken some of the less suitable matter out. So there might be less swearing, and there might be some elements that were removed. Now, we do have a manuscript version of the original text that does exist, but we are working from the printed version, and so there are some differences. Most of them, I believe, are cosmetic, and then there's some big chunky ones towards the end, which we'll deal with tomorrow. Today we are looking at Act 3 and Act 4 of this tragedy, but before we start, we will actually be looking at the argument. We're going to spoiler you, people. I may put a timer in if you don't want to be spoiled about where this play is going, even though most of it's quite obvious. But the original audience may have had an argument available to them. It may have been circulating, and of course the printed version, you could read this stuff before you started reading the play itself. To help guide me through this Inns of Court play, reading today, chorus number 1 and Megarea is...
Hi, I'm Rachael, an actor in New Jersey.
Reading Guiscard and Renuchio. I didn't even practice that in advance. I have no idea how to say those names.
I am Eric, and I have no idea how to say those either, but my brain just went Italian, Renuchio, but it's obviously not that.
Reading Lucrece, chorus number 2, and Julio is...
Lynsey Beauchamp, actor in Norfolk.
Reading Cupid, or Vampire Cupid, as we like to think of them. Chorus number 4, and Tancred the King is...
Hi, Lisa Hill-Corley, right outside DC, sighing a breath of relief.
And reading Gismunda, and chorus number 3 is...
I'm Gillian. I'm an Irish actor in London.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I'll be helping to keep everything moving along, reading the few stage directions that there are. So before we start, we're going to spoiler you, because there are 2 arguments. The one in verse, which possibly might be from the original performance, who knows? And then there is another of the same in prose that's a bit longer. And a bit more detailed. So it's a sort of Rupert Bear version of how to explain the plot. Picture, short lines, big chunk of prose. I'm going to ask Gillian. Gillian, as I wonder if you would read for us the argument of the tragedy. It's a few pages in from just the argument in verse to tell us what the plot is, because we forgot what happened yesterday, and we want to know what's going to happen tomorrow. So, the argument of the tragedy.
Tancred, the Prince of Salerne, overloves his only daughter, wonder of that age, Gismund, who loves the County Palarin, Guiscard, who quites her likings with his love. A letter in a cane describes the means of their 2 meetings in a secret cave. Unconstant fortune leadeth forth the king to this unhappy sight, wherewith, in rage, the gentle earl he doometh to his death, and greets his daughter with her lover's heart. Gismunda fills the goblet with her tears, and drinks the poison which she had distilled, whereof she dies, whose deadly countenance so grieves her father that he slew himself.
So, there's the plot, and for those who are here for Act 1 and Act 2, pretty much all of that was covered in the first 2 lines or so. 2-3 lines. We haven't actually got very far in terms of actual action. We've discovered that Gismunda is obviously quite sad because of her previous. No mention of a previous attachment. So all sorts of things that are mentioned and not mentioned, which I'm interested in. We now have the longer version, which I'm going to ask Lynsey to read. This is another of the same, more at large, in prose.
Tancred, king of Naples and prince of Salern, gave his only daughter Gismund, whom he most dearly loved, in marriage to a foreign prince, after whose death she returned home to her father, who, having felt great grief of her absence whilst her husband lived, immeasurably esteeming her, determined never to suffer any second marriage to bereave him of her. She, on the other side, waxing weary of that her father's purpose, bent her mind to the secret love of the County Palurin, to whom, he being likewise inflamed with love of her, by a letter subtly enclosed in a cloven cane, she gave to understand a convenient way for their desired meetings through an old ruinous vault whose mouth opened directly under her chamber floor. Into this vault, when she was one day descended for the conveyance of her lover, her father, in the mean season, whose only joy was in his daughter, came to her chamber, and not finding her there, supposing her to have been walked abroad for her disport, he threw him down on her bed and covered his head with a curtain, minding to abide and rest there till her return. She, nothing suspecting this her father's unseasonable coming, brought up her lover out of the cave into her chamber, where her father espied their secret love, and he, not espied of them, was upon this sight stricken with marvellous grief. But either for that the sudden despite had amazed him and taken from him all use of speech, or for that he resolved himself to a more convenient revenge, he then spake nothing, but noted their return into the vault and secretly departed. Afterwards, bewailing his mishap, he commanded the earl to be attached, imprisoned, strangled, unboweled, and his heart in a cup of gold to be presented to his daughter. She thankfully receiveth the present, filling the cup wherein the heart was with her tears, with a venomous potion by her distilled for that purpose. She drank to her earl, which her father hearing of came too late to comfort his dying daughter, who for her last request besought him that her lover and herself might in one tomb be together buried for a perpetual memory of their faithful loves, which request he granted, adding to the burial himself, slain with his own hands, to his own reproach, and the terror of all other hard-hearted fathers.
And they all lived happily ever after. Yes. For once, I'm actually allowing us to know what we're heading headlong into. It is a tragedy, so the idea of anyone living happily ever after is known to be slightly unlikely. There's lots of really interesting details in there, and I'm interested to see whether they will appear or whether they've been added and elaborated upon. The commanded the earl to be attached, imprisoned, strangled, unboweled. There's quite a lot of detail there.
Yes, he really made sure he was genuinely dead.
Yes. Any thoughts in the room about the sort of the difference in detail between the two? It's interesting. I've noticed that the first one, there's no mention that Gismunda, who seems to have interchangeable names. I suppose it depends on where you want to put the stress. So I suppose that sort of makes that fine. There's no mention in the first one that she had been married before. That this whole issue is about a second marriage as well. So there's all sorts of interesting questions there. And last time we had an awful lot of detail about questions about virginity as well, and propriety for these kinds of things. The chorus is not necessarily on Gismunda's side. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts in the room before we actually go into the text itself? Not much to be getting on with, I can tell. But I say this primarily so that everyone can turn to Act 3. Eric?
It's very elaborate, sort of like, you can die by poisoning yourself, obviously, but like sort of she chooses to die by drinking poison in a cup that it has the heart of her ex-lover in it. And it's like, what the... Okay, yeah.
And with her tears as well.
Yes, I do.
You've always got to mix these things with tears. Otherwise, it's not poetic enough, is it? Student drama, people. Student drama. That's where we're living. This is all written by students.
I have a heart right here.
Nice.
Convenient, right?
We'll see if we get that far today. We may not. Any other thoughts? No. Have we all found Act 3?
Yes.
Excellent. So I'll let a couple of scenes run into each other. The scenes as listed are often... actually, almost could run Act 3 all the way through without stopping at all, but I'll figure that out. When it says it's a different scene, it's usually indicate the scene is a different exit or major entrance rather than necessarily a cleared stage. That tends to be how this works. So it tends to be that we stop and start a lot after speeches. But before Act 3, there's a little dumb show. So before this act, the Hawk Boys sounded a lofty Almain, and Cupid ushereth after him Guiscard and Gismunda hand in hand. So they're showing us in dumb show that she quite likes him, presumably. There. Julio and Lucrece, Renuchio and another maiden of honour. The measures trod, Gismunda gives a cane into Guiscard's hand, and they are all led forth again by Cupid ut sequitur. And now Cupid speaks as Act 1, Scene 1.
So now they feel what lordly love can do, that proudly practice to deface his name. In vain they wrestle with so fierce a foe, of little sparks arise a blazing flame. By small occasions love can kindle heat, and waste the oaken breast to cinder dust. Gismund I have enticed to forget her widow's weeds, and burn in raging lusts. 'Twas I enforced her father to deny her second marriage to any peer. 'Twas I allured her once again to try the sour sweets that lovers buy too dear. The county Palarin, a man right wise, a man of exquisite perfections, I have like wounded with her piercing eyes, and burnt her heart with his reflections. These two shall joy in tasting of my sweet, to make them prove more feelingly the grief that bitter brings, for when their joys shall fleet, their dole shall be increased without relief. Thus love shall make worldlings know his might, thus love shall force great princes to obey. Thus love shall daunt each proud rebelling spirit, thus love shall wreak his wrath on their decay. Their ghost shall give black hell to understand how great and wonderful a god is love. And this shall learn the ladies of this land with patient minds his mighty power to prove. From whence I did ascend, now will I mount to Jove and all the gods in their delights. In throne of triumph there will I recount how I by sharp revenge on mortal weights have taught the earth and learned hellish sprites to yield with fear their stubborn hearts to love, lest their disdain his plagues and vengeance prove.
Cupid remounteth into the heavens. And we will pause briefly there. So yeah, Cupid did it all. It's all Cupid's fault.
Yeah.
Sort of laying it
The
on.
problems are coming.
Yeah. Thus love,
His
thus love.
revenge. Right. Love's revenge.
Absolutely. Cupid is a tricksy figure at the best of times, but it does seem particularly vengeful in this play.
In this one, right. He's just more of a trickster, kind of but this is like malice a bit. I'll teach them to love,
You call that love?
Pleasant, right?
Eric.
It is that thing of sort of yes, they're not taking me seriously enough, therefore I will make them pay.
Yes.
Yeah, and Rachael.
I feel like in this play he's just having such a power trip. Like he's having a power trip. Yeah. That's it. He's just on a bender. A love bender.
Do we think he's still naked as he was at the beginning of the play?
I think Cupid's always naked. He's just running. Apart from his wings. His wings is the only covered part of him.
Modesty wings.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I think the wings are out there, and he's just going, look, I'm fabulous. I think that's that.
He's
that
sometimes drawn a nappy on him, isn't he? Maybe he's got something like that.
We can only hope.
Yeah.
So the love between Guiscard and Gismunda is Cupid's. He's putting it that way. I've enticed them to forget her widow's weeds and burn in raging lust. So there's no middle ground as far as Cupid's concerned. So right, let's see the consequence of that then, because she was sort of thinking about, maybe she could remarry and meet someone nice earlier, and Daddy was very against it. So Act 3, Scene 2, Lucrece, who is the aunt, cometh out of Gismunda's chamber solitary.
Pity that moveth every gentle heart to rue their griefs that be distressed in pain, enforceth me to wail my niece's smart, whose tender breast no long time may sustain the restless toil that her unquiet mind hath caused her feeble body to endure. But why it is, alack, I must not find, nor know the man by whom I might procure her remedy, as I of duty ought, as to the law of kinship doth belong. With careful heart the secret means I sought, though small effect is of my travail sprung. Full often as I durst, I have essayed with humble words the princess to require to name the man which she hath so denayed, that it abashed me further to desire, or ask from whence those cloudy thoughts proceed, whose stony force, that smoky sighs forth send, is lively witness, how that careful dread and hot desire within her do contend. Yet she denies what she confessed of yore, and then conjoined me to conceal the same. She loved once, she saith, but never more, nor ever will her fancy thereto frame. Though daily I observed in my breast what sharp conflicts disquiet her so sore, that heavy sleep cannot procure her rest, but fearful dreams present her evermore most hideous sights her quiet to molest, that starting oft therewith she doth awake, to muse upon those fancies which torment her thoughtful heart with horror, that doth make her cold chill sweat break forth incontinent from her weak limbs. And while the quiet night gives others rest, she, turning to and fro, doth wish for day. But when the day brings light, she keeps her bed, there to record her woe. As soon as when she riseth, flowing tears stream down her cheeks, inmixed with deadly groans, whereby her inward sorrow so appears, that as salt tears the cruel cause bemoans. In case she be constrained to abide in press of company, she scarcely may her trembling voice restrain, it be not spied from careful plaints her sorrows to bewray. By which restraint the force doth so increase, when time and place give liberty to plain, that as small streams from running never cease till they return into the seas again, so her laments, we fear, will not amend before they bring her princely life to end. To others' talk when as she should attend, her heaped cares her senses so oppress, that what they speak or whereto their words tend, she knows not, as her answers do express. Her chief delight is still to be alone. Her pensive thoughts within themselves debate. But whereupon this restless life is grown, since I know not nor how the same to abate, I can no more but wish it as I may, that he which knows it would the same allay, for which the muses with my song shall pray.
And there's a song which sadly we do not have, and we'll come to that in a moment. So Lucrece is noting what's up with Gismunda. It just sort of leapt out at me, and there may have been more, but there's an awful lot of her feeble body, her weak limbs. Is that a personal statement, or is that just a generic male? This weaker woman misogyny thing coming in, or what? This is, I should point out, since yesterday, a different writer. Once again, each act has a different hand to it. So we're about to find out what what Al is like. We don't know their name. All we've got is G and Al.
From what you just said about all the references to her being weak, or is this supposed to give a greater impact to just how depressed she is, that the hitherto vital life force that is Gismunda is now completely wasting away with what's going on. I don't know.
Yeah, Cupid's done a number on her. It's bad. It's bad. Other thoughts about what Lucrece is imparting to us as information, Eric?
Well, because sometimes we talk about how you could stage this, and I was thinking that you could have sort of, Lucrece doing her piece, and then sort of in the background, or as like sort of shadows sort of Gismunda enacting this, because obviously it's kind of like, this is action, basically. It's kind of like, you could, if you turned this into like direct speech as opposed to, just someone telling you about events, it could become very sort of impactful. So I don't know, maybe, unless it's just sort of, I am so concerned she doesn't do what we usually do, then.
Yes, the images of her, tossing and turning and going through these paroxysms. Other thoughts? Anyone want to leap in? Rachael, so you were giving a face just then that I was not sure where.
No, my cat is just behind me and she's being weird. No, but what I meant to say, the reason that I wanted to jump in because we were talking about this is back to what Eric just said, and what Alexandra was saying yesterday about the staging of this. I feel like this third act might be the hardest one to tackle in terms of staging, just because it's less, there's less scenes going on and just a monologue, and then somebody else comes and says how they feel. It's just back-to-back monologue of description. So I feel like there might be a little slowdown from the second.
And it's interesting, the question of what sort of gaps there are between acts as well, whether there is a musical interlude time for people to go and do something else, or before the next act starts, which is possible with an interior drama like this. Eric?
Yeah, but it does follow the structure of, I think it's Act 1, where it's got like 3 monologues in a row, and then you start getting the dialogue when Lucrece and Tancred appear and stuff, and Gismunda, of course.
Yeah, there may be a structural thing we'll find later on, is that actually Act 1 and Act 2 work as a unit, Act 3 and Act 4 work as a unit, and then Act 5 is another. So it may structurally function slightly better if as a 3-act rather than a 5-act in the way it goes, because we open the play with Cupid, and then we open these 2 acts with Cupid, and certainly Act 4 is a lot busier in terms of scene and character work. So the idea maybe there was a formal interval after Act 2, and the audience is being invited to sort of get back up to speed. Maybe. Okay, unless other thoughts occur, we will rattle on to the end of the act. It's not a long act, Act 3. It's very short, of a play that is mostly full of short acts. Act 3, Scene 3. Again, we've had this moment of music. Lucrece is doing some singing, which was, by report, very sweetly repeated by the chorus. So apparently it was good. We hear. So call and response kind of song as well. So Lucrece is singing, and then the chorus are in support as backing singers. Lucrece departeth into Gismunda's chamber, and Guiscard cometh out of the palace with Julio and Renuchio, gentlemen, to whom he turneth and saith.
Leave me, my friends. This solitary walk entices me to break your company. Leave me, my friends. I can endure no talk. Let me entreat this common courtesy.
And the gentlemen who've only just entered exit.
What grievous pain they endure, which neither may forget their loves, nay, yet enjoy their love, I know by proof, and daily make say. Though love hath brought my lady's heart to love, my faithful love would like love to requite. This doth not quench, but rather cause to flame the creeping fire which, spreading in my breast, with raging heat, grants me no time of rest. If they bewail their cruel destiny, which spent their love where they no love can find, well may I plain, since fortune haleth me to this torment of far more grievous kind, wherein I feel as much extremity as it may be felt in body or in mind. For by that sight which should recure my pain, my sorrows are redoubled all in vain. Now I perceive that only I alone am her beloved. Her looks assure me so. The thought thereof provokes me to bemoan her heavy plight that grieveth at my woe. This intercourse of our affections, I her to serve, she thus to honour me, bewrays the truth of our elections, delighting in this mutual sympathy. Thus love for love entreats the queen of love, that with her help love's solace we may prove. I see my mistress seeks as well as I to stay the strife of her perplexed mind. For full fain she would our secret company, if she the wished way thereof might find. Heavens, have ye seen, or hath the age of man recorded such a miracle as this? In equal love, 2 noble hearts to frame, that never spake one with another's bliss. I am assured that she doth assent to my relief, that I should reap the same, if she could frame the means of my content, keeping herself from danger of defame. In happy hour right now I did receive this cane from her, which gift though it be small, receiving it, what joys did I conceive within my fainting spirits therewithal. Who knoweth love aright may well conceive by like adventures that to them befall. For needs the lover must esteem that well, which comes from her, with whom his heart doth dwell. Assuredly it is not without cause she gave me this. Something she meant thereby. For therewithal I might perceive her pause a while, as though some weighty thing did lie upon her heart, which she concealed, because the standers by should not our loves decry. This clift bewrays that it hath been disclosed. Perhaps herein she hath something enclosed. Oh, thou great thunderer, who would not serve where wit with beauty chosen have their place? Who could devise more wisely to conserve things from suspect? O Venus, for this grace that deigns me, all unworthy to deserve so rare a love, in heaven I should thee place. This sweet letter some joyful news contains. Hope it brings recure to both our pains. Mine own, as I am yours, whose heart I know no less than mine, for lingering help of woe doth long too long. Love, tendering your case in mine, hath taught recure of both our pain. My chamber floor doth hide a cave where was an old vault's mouth. The other in the plain doth rise southward, a furlong from the wall. To send you there, this shall suffice, and so I yield myself, mine honor, life, and all to you. Use you the same, as there may grow your bliss in mine earl, and that the same free may abide from danger of defame. Farewell, and fare so well as that your joy which only can may comfort mine annoy. Yours more than her own, Gismund. Oh, blissful chance my sorrows to assuage. Wonderful of nature, marvel of our age. Comes this from Gismunda? Did she thus enfold this letter in the cane? May it be so? It were too sweet a joy. I am deceived. Why shall I doubt? Did she not give it me? Therefore, therewith she smiled, she joyed, she wrought the cane, and with her own sweet hand she gave it me. And as we danced, she dallied with the cane, and sweetly whispered, I should be her king. And with this cane, the sceptre of our rule, command the sweets of her surprised heart. Therewith she wrought from her alluring locks this golden tress, the favor of her grace, and with her own sweet hand she gave it me. O peerless queen, my joy, my heart's decree, and thou, fair letter, how shall I welcome thee, both hand and pen, wherewith thou written wert? Blessed may ye be with such solace that impart, and blessed be this cane, and he that taught thee to describe the hidden entry thus. Not only through a dark and dreadful vault, but fire and sword, and through whatever be, mistress of my desires, I come to thee.
And Guiscard departeth in haste into the palace, and the chorus, who've been here all the time, probably, or they're always available whenever they're needed without any entrance or exit cues, now speak to close the act.
Right mighty is thy power, O cruel love. High Jove himself cannot resist thy bow. Thou sent'st him down, e'en from the heavens above, in sundry shapes here to the earth below. Then how shall mortal man escape thy dart, the fervent flame and burning of thy fire? Since that thy might is such, and since thou art both of the seas and land the Lord and sire.
But why doth she that sprang from Jove's high head and Phoebus' sister sheen, despite thy power, nay fear thy bow? Why have they always led a maiden life, and kept untouched the flower? Why doth Aegisthus love, and to obtain his wicked will, conspire his uncle's death? Or why doth Phaedra burn, from whom is slain Theseus' chaste son? Or Helen, false of faith? For love assaults not but the idle heart, and such as live in pleasure and delight. He turneth oft their gladsome joys to smart, their play to plaint, their sport into despite.
'Tis true that Dian chaseth with her bow the flying hart, the goat, the foamy boar, by hill, by dale, in heat, in frost, in snow. She recketh not, but laboureth evermore. Love seeks not her, nay knoweth where to find. Whilst Paris kept his herd on Ida down, Cupid ne'er sought him out, for he is blind. But when he left the field to live in town, he fell into his snare, and brought that brand from Greece to Troy, which after set on fire strong Ilium, and all the Phrygian land. Such are the fruits of love, such is his hire.
Who yieldeth unto him his captive heart, ere he resist and hold his open breast, without with ward take his bloody dart. Let him not think to shake it off when him list his heavy yoke. Resist his first assault, weak is his bow, his quenched brand is cold. Cupid is but a child, and cannot daunt the mind that bears him, or his futures bold. But he gives poison so to drink in gold, and hideth under pleasant baits his hook. But ye beware, it will be hard to hold your greedy minds, but if ye wisely look, what sly snakes lurks under those flowers gay. But ye mistrust some cloudy smokes, and fear a stormy shower after so fair a day. You may repent and buy your pleasure dear, for seldom times is Cupid wont to send unto an idle love a joyful end.
And thus ends Act 3, written by, say, G. Owl. Is all we know. We don't know who it is. Yeah, so everything the dumb show predicted came true. Lo, a stick with a hole in it had a letter which has passed on news, and apparently Gismunda has, and this is a feature that turns up in some properties in early modern drama, more than one. Apparently, underneath their chamber, there's a cave. We all have one. Always knocking through to that cave extension. It's a good place. I mean, in theory, you're supposed to keep, that's your secret hiding place. But inevitably, it's just where you put boxes, random stuff. It's supposed to be there for as part of your layer, but it never happens. Never happens. Thoughts from the room about this new character, Guiscard, the love interest, who's got some mates who are briefly introduced to leave immediately. It's like literally they just go, leave me alone. Oh, I'm sad. And then has this stick. So yeah, thoughts from the room. Rachael.
No, I was just gonna say I like the lines. I like what's written. Act 1 and Act 3, they both seem so much more poetic. Like the two guys that were writing them are very familiar with poetry and poetic form, but that they haven't as much experience staging something. Whereas in Act 2, it seems like that person has more experience writing for the stage and knowing how to hit certain levels and how to do that. But yeah, this besides I think so I think that might be part of the challenge when putting it on, but I still think that this is that this is just still beautifully written, and that it's going through it's getting us to the next part of the story, but it's beautifully written.
Yeah, it's that thing. When we were reading Act 1, it was that sense of the words just slightly sliding off because it was just so florid. I don't feel this act is quite as florid, but you're right. I think it is much more interested in poetry and the flow of things than the drama that's unfolding on stage. Guiscard has basically a couple of different beats of I am sad, I am now happy. I don't necessarily see the sort of various gear changes. I might be being unfair. Disagree with me if you wish, Lynsey.
Well, if you had the cane of might and joy that Guiscard had, then you would also transition pretty quickly from sorrow to joy. I feel. I mean, I think this is. I'm trying to imagine this prop. I'm trying to imagine what kind of cane it is, and he obviously spies a bit where it kind of, he can tell that it's been split open, which causes him to presumably take the top off, or I'm not sure how it works, and find the rolled up letter inside or that kind of thing, or I'm not sure how it will work, but that's pretty, and it's because the audience know from the argument and from the dumb show that this is the cane of might and joy. They're going to be wanting him to get on with opening up this cane and reading the letter. So I think it's quite cool. I mean, I quite like it.
Yes, because the play is telling us the plot before the plot happens here, which is not quite what the earlier dumb shows were doing. So it's quite nice. Lisa.
I just like how the choruses also have Cupid's number. Like they know what's going on, and they're like trying to warn. It's too late for the lovers in this play, but for the rest of you beware. Fun speeches.
Yeah, and just to make sure, we're going to quote you lots of unhappy lovers prior to this time.
Yeah, they are doing the footnotes, aren't they? And here are the examples of other victims. If you've been a victim of love
Right.
without your
You've been affected by any of the issues in this play.
call love lawyers for you, and we will for no win, no fee claim against Cupid.
Magically appear in your room and tell you all the things that Cupid does.
I think surely Cupid could come out of the the cave in the floor, especially as we've got Cupid as the sort of vampire character now. Surely Cupid could rise up from the underworld, blood streaming down, blindly trying to, find his way around the stage or whatever. Stark naked.
Let's just be a true villain. Let's just go for it.
Yeah, I mean the stage said remounteth into the heavens, but yeah, let's make him a denizen of the below worlds. Rachael.
No, I mean, like there does seem to be that, like, the love is blind and the thing with the cane. So maybe he literally is blind and he doesn't have eyes, and he's been, you know what I mean? Maybe something's happened to his eyes, and he really goes full into like this little bit of like Cupid, but with like a little bit of what do you call it, like body gore twist, where you don't have, you know what I'm saying? So maybe that could be a thing.
It does depend on the depiction, because some Cupids are depicted, or they're depicted as artificially blind. They have a blindfold, so basically only when he fires arrows, because that's the system, and that. So, yeah. Other thoughts from the room before we crash headlong into Act 4, where suddenly there's all these other people. Eric.
Well, I was expecting, because obviously, I saw this page of text and we know that it's long speeches and stuff, but it just, I didn't expect it to go so quickly. It was just like, because obviously he goes through like sort of, oh, does she love me? Does she not love me? I'm in love with her, but yeah, so on and so forth. And then suddenly it's like, oh, but look, a cane that she gave me. And she said that, you will be my king. And then suddenly it just sort of drops into like, well, this cane, what am I supposed to do with this? And then suddenly it's like, oh, ta-da, I broke it into, or whatever. And it's just, I don't know, it just went by really quickly. And I think you could even make it less boring, so to speak, by getting a voiceover where he reads the letter or something. And that seems kind of like a modern thing, but I mean, why not?
Well, again, the dumb shows invite that kind of shift of focus in the text. This is the thing. This play is not very long. It really isn't. We are drawing the delights out here, and and the other thing to remember is that the audience can't see how many words there are on the page coming up. The audience doesn't know that the speeches are long until
neither did I.
until they're not interested. So it's a matter of are they good speeches is the important thing, and they do seem to be working quite well. I can't remember. I'm sure, isn't there a line where Guiscard just says, "I'm sure she likes me because she looked at me once," or something like that. There's a line a bit like that, because he's not sure that she likes him, and there's something quite teenagery about that I quite like, of just going, "I think she likes me. She looked at me once from across the room.
Now I perceive that only I alone am her beloved. Her looks assure me so." And it's like, okay.
So, they haven't really spoken. This letter is the confirmation. So it's a big moment for this man. Lovely. Any additional thoughts before we move on into Act 4? New writer, Christopher Hatton is our author for this act. So I'm sure that makes all the difference to you. Chris H. We open again with a dumb show and more music. Before this act, there was heard a consort of sweet music, which playing Tancred cometh forth, and draweth Gismunda's curtains, and lies down upon her bed. Then from under the stage ascendeth Guiscard, and he helpeth up Gismunda. They amorously embrace and depart. Be still, my beating heart. The king ariseth enraged. Then was heard and seen a storm of thunder and lightning, in which the Furies rise up as follows. So that's exciting. Before this act 4, Scene 1, Megara riseth out of hell with the other Furies, Alecto and Tisiphone, dancing an hellish round. We've got dancing, we've got music, we've got thunder, we've got lightning, which done Megara says,
Sisters, begone, bequeath the rest to me, that yet belongs unto this tragedy.
and the two Furies departs down.
Vengeance and death from forth the deepest hell. I bring the cursed home, where Gismund dwells, sent from the grisly god that holds his reign in Tartar's ugly realm, where Pelops' sire, who with his own son's flesh, whom he had slain, did feast the gods, with famine hath his hire, to gape and catch at flying fruits in vain, and yielding waters to his gasping throat, where stormy Aeol's sun with endless pain rolls up the rock, where Tityus hath his lot, to feed the gripe that gnaws his growing heart, where proud Ixion, whirled on the wheel, pursues himself where due deserved smart. The damned ghosts in burning flame do feel, from hence I mount, thither the winged god, nephew to Atlas that upholds the sky, of late down from earth with goldenrod, to Stygian fairy Salern souls did guide, and made report how love, that lordly boy, highly disdained his renown's decay, slipped down from heaven, and filled with fickle joy Gismunda's heart, and made her throw away chasteness of life to her immortal shame, minding to show by proof of her foul end some terror unto those that scorn his name. Black Pluto that once found Cupid his friend in winning Ceres' daughter, queen of hells, and Parthe, moved by the grieved ghost of her late husband that in Tartar dwells, who prayed due pains for her that thus hath lost all care of him and of her chastity. The Senate then of hell, by grave advice of Minos, Ache, and of Radamant, commands me draw this hateful air, and rise above the earth, with dole and death to daunt the pride and present joys, wherewith these two feed their disdained hearts, which now to do, behold, I come with instruments of death, the stinging snake, which is of hate and wrath, I'll fix upon her father's heart full fast, and into hers this other will I cast. Those rankling venoms shall infect them so, with envious wrath and with recureless woe, each shall be other's plague and overthrow. Furies must aid, when men surcease to know their gods, and hell sends forth revenging pain on those whom shame from sin cannot restrain.
And we will deal with how Megara gets off the stage in a moment. Yeah, this house desperately needs to get the supernatural exterminators in. I mean, you've got to be kicking those floorboards going, yeah, you've got some Furies in your woodwork there. It's going to cost you, because you've got Cupid coming in through the ceiling, you've got Furies coming out of the floor. It's a nightmare. Always nice to hear from Radamant there. I'm assuming that's what Radamant is there. So haven't heard from them since the Spanish tragedy, so it's nice to a call forward, as it were, temporarily where we are. It's really exciting stuff. I mean, you think you're going to begin an act with music and this dumb show about father and daughter and lover and embracing, and then thunder and lightning, and this happens. How are we liking the Megara? Thoughts in the room, Lynsey?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can have a lot of fun with that. I mean, it's a great speech full of very exciting language and imagery and all kinds of stuff, and you know, for a contemporary audience, you know, having a Fury come on stage and with two other Furies and there being dancing and all that, I mean, this would have been a big entertainment. I mean, I'm seeing fire juggling and, you know, all kinds of stuff. You can have a lot of fun with it, I think.
Yeah, we've got these characters again who are brought on to leave. It's like, this is the speaking person, this is the person who speaks, they're going to speak. We have these other people who come on stage who are then told to immediately leave because that part of things is over. So the dumb show's done. The dancers can now step off the stage and leave the actors to it. Other thoughts, Eric?
I was gonna say maybe they're doing that for doubling reasons, but I don't know if that's because we haven't read the rest of the play yet, so I don't know. Maybe it's like, oh, these two will come in handy later.
It might be. It might simply be there are some people who just don't do the talking and they're there to do the dumb show stuff. It might be a division of labour thing. I genuinely don't know. I mean, I believe this play could be doubled extremely small if you wanted to. I mean, I could have. One of the things sometimes with the evening sessions is I make sure that in case people need to drop out, that I can take one or two parts out and we can still read the play. Yeah, it could be. It could be. Any additional thoughts before we'll get into some more business, because the Megarea have not exited. Not yet. They're exiting now as we go into Act 4, Scene 2. The Megara entereth into the palace and meeteth with Tancred, the daddy, coming out of Gismunda's daughter's chamber with Renuchio and Julio, upon whom she throweth her snake.
Gods.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah. Gods, are ye guides of justice and revenge? O thou great thunderer, dost thou behold with watchful eyes the subtle scapes of men hardened in shame, seared up in the desire of their own lusts? Why then dost thou withhold the blast of thy revenge? Why dost thou grant such liberty, such lewd occasions to execute their shameless villainy? Thou art cause of all this open wrong, thou that forbearest thy vengeance all too long. If thou spare them, rain upon my head the fullness of thy plagues with deadly ire, to reave this rueful soul, who all too sore burns in the wrathful torments of revenge. O earth, the mother of each living wight, open thy womb and devour this withered corpse. O hell, if ever hell there be that I feel, receive my soul to thee. O daughter, wherefore do I grace her with so kind a name? O thou fond girl, this shameful ruin of thy father's house, is this my hoped joy? Is this the stay must glad my grieful years that waste away? For life, which first thou didst receive from me, 10,000 deaths shall I receive by thee. For all the joys I did repose in thee, which I, fond man, did settle in thy sight. Is this thy recompense, that I must see the thing so shameful and so villainous, that would God this earth had swallowed? This worthless burden into lowest deeps, rather than I, accursed, had beheld the sight that hourly massacres my life? Oh, whither fliest thou forth, my soul? Oh, whither wandereth my tormented mind? Those pains that make the miser glad of death have seized on me, and yet I cannot have what villains may command, a speedy death. Whom shall I first accuse for this outrage? That God that guideth all, and guideth so this damned deed. Shall I blaspheme their names, the gods, the authors of this spectacle? Or shall I justly curse that cruel star whose influence assigned this destiny? But may that traitor, shall that vile wretch live, by whom I received this injury? Or shall I longer make account of her that fondly prostitutes her widow's shame? I have bethought thee what I shall request. On bended knees, with hands heaved up to heaven, this, the sacred synod of the gods, I crave, first on the traitor, your consuming ire, next on the cursed trumpet's dire revenge, last on myself, the wretched father, shame. Oh, could I stamp, and therewithal command armies of furies to assist my heart, to prosecute due vengeance on their souls. Hear me, my friends, but as ye love your lives, reply not to me, hearken and stand amazed. When I, as is my wont, oh fond delight, went forth to seek my daughter, now my death, within her chamber, as I thought she was. But there I found her not. I deemed then from her disport she and her maidens were down in the garden walked to comfort them, and thinking thus, it came into my mind, there all alone to tarry her return. And thereupon I weary threw myself upon her widow's bed, for so I thought, that the curtain wrapped my cursed head. Thus as I lay, anon I might behold out of the vault, up through her chamber floor, my daughter Gismund bringing hand in hand a county palarin. Alas, it is too true. At her bed's feet this traitor made me see her shame, his treason, and my deadly grief. Her princely body yielded to this thief. This high despite whereof so wounded me, that trance-like as a senseless stone I lay, for neither wit nor tongue could use the mean to express the passions of my pained heart. Forceless perforce I sank down to this pain, as greedy famine doth restrain the hawk, piecemeal to rend and tear the yielding prey. So far with me that heavy sound. But now what shall I do? How may I seek to ease my mind that burneth with desire of dire revenge? For never shall my thoughts grant ease into my heart till I have found a mean of vengeance to requite his pains that first conveyed this sight into my soul. Renuchio!
What is your highness's will?
Call my daughter. My heart boils till I see her in my sight, to whom I may discharge all the unrest that doth distempereth me.
And exit Renuchio.
Shall I destroy them both? Oh gods, you know how near and dear our daughter is to us. And yet my rage persuades me to imbrue my thirsty hands in both their trembling bloods, therewith to cool my wrathful fury's heat. But nature, why repent'st thou at this thought? Why should I think upon a father's debt to her that thought not on a daughter's due? But still methinks if I should see her die, and therewithal reflects her dying eyes upon my eyes, that sight would slit my heart. Not much unlike the cockatrice that slays the object of his foul infections. Oh, what a conflict doth my mind endure. Now fight my thoughts against my passions. Now strive my passions against my thoughts. Now sweats my heart. Now chill cold falls it dead. Help, heavens, and succor, ye celestial powers. Infuse your secret virtue on my soul. Shall nature win? Shall justice not prevail? Shall I, a king, be proved partial? How shall our subjects then insult on us, when our examples that are light to them shall be eclipsed with our proper deeds? And may the arms be rented from the tree, the members from their body be dissevered? And can the heart endure no violence? My daughter is to me mine only heart, my life, my comfort, my continuance. Shall I be then not only so unkind to pass all nature's strength and cut her off? And therewithal so cruel to myself, against all law of kind, to shred in twain the golden thread that doth us both maintain. But were it that my rage should show command, and I consent to her untimely death, were this an end to all our miseries? No, her ghost will still pursue our life, and from the deep her bloodless, gaspful spirit will, as my shadow in the shining day, follow my footsteps till she take revenge. I will do thus. Therefore, the traitor dies, because he scorned the favor of his king, and our displeasure willfully incurred. His slaughter, with her sorrow for his blood, shall to our rage supply delightful food. Julio.
What is't your majesty commands?
Julio, if we'd had not our hope in vain, nor all the trust we do repose in thee, now must we try if thou approve the same. Herein thy force and wisdom we must see, for our command requires them both of thee.
How by your grace's bounty I am bound beyond the common bond wherein each man stands bound unto his king. How I have found honor and wealth by favor in your sight, I do acknowledge with most thankful mind. My truth, with other means to serve your grace, whatever you in honor shall assign, hath sworn her power true vassal to your hest. For proof let but your majesty command, I shall unlock the prison of my soul, although unkindly horror would gainsay. Yet in obedience to your highness will, by whom I hold the tenor of this life, this hand and blade will be the instruments to make pale death to grapple with my heart.
Well, to be short, for I am grieved too long by wrath without revenge. I think you know where there is a palace builded strong for war within our court, where dreadless peace hath planted now a weaker entrance. But that of palace yet one vault remains within our court, the secret way whereof is to our daughter Gismund's chamber laid. There is also another mouth hereof without our wall, which now is overgrown, but you may find it out, for yet it lies directly south a furlong from our palace. It may be known hard by an ancient stoop, where grew an oak in elder days decayed. There we will see what you watch. There shall you see a villain traitor mount out of a vault. Bring him to us. It is the Earl Palarin. What is his fault? Neither shall you inquire, nor list we to disclose. These cursed eyes have seen the flame, this heart hath felt the fire that cannot else be quenched but with his blood. This must be done. This will we have you do.
Both this and else, whatever you think good.
And Julio departeth into the palace, and Tancred remains on stage. We will pause there. Oh, it's really started getting juicy now, hasn't it? You know, these characters haven't just been brought on to go off and do things, though they have been brought on to go off and do things. That, you know, they are being made to go off and do some, you know, tasks that matter, and we are with a king who's just, yeah. There's a whole thing going on there. The snake's been thrown on him. That's what it is. That snake's really bitten into. I mean, I want to know how you do that.
Right. That's not her. I guess they're a dumb show, and yeah, that's a tough one. And I have a question. Does he get the snake? Does the snake make him spy on his daughter and the lover, or that happened? He has a snake, and now he's really upset about it.
Yeah, I wonder about the symbolism there, and whether, yes, that's actually should have happened sort of earlier, and that's got confused with this just straightforward entrance. But I like the idea of Megara just tossing a snake at him on her exit. Yeah, I mean, I think we should talk about the Gismunda's daddy issues, or should I rather say, Gismunda's daddy has issues. Yeah, there are some issues. You know, and how far do we take that? I mean, I know how far we probably want to take this, but how far were they taking it? And yeah, what's going on there? Thoughts in the room on Tancred? Rachael.
I don't know, that there's just so much talk of the blood that, you know, Cupid brings up every once in a while, and I wonder if some of his talk about being taken seriously when he shows up is that he wants people to give him a blood sacrifice, like a human sacrifice, like other gods would get, and maybe this is like the writers are adding this in, you know, as like, you know, remember people in like old dramas, there would be these things, you know, like there would be Andromeda, and they would be giving human sacrifices to like the gods, and he's got her father on this warpath, I think specifically because he wants her as a human sacrifice in that way, because he does like bring up Pluto, who you know, kidnaps Persephone, and you know, maybe that's what this is. This is sort of a Greek god abducting somebody, but he's, you know, half between, you know, he's half dead himself. He's like of the undead. Who knows? I'm just throwing out nice little fan theories here.
Yeah, it's this constant language about blood and slaughter and thirsty hands, and you know, there's it's unrelenting really here, and but we have had a journey from the very beginning. He was a bit obsessive, but he, you know, it could be confused for just reasonable concern over what happens with his daughter next. Ish, and it gets worse as the play goes on, and it's just getting more florid and more bloody, and this, and we you know, he's seen this man climbing up out the door in the chamber floor, and but before that, all this stuff about him throwing himself on the bed and covering himself in the curtain, and that's not dodgy at all, is it?
That thing about the eavesdropper never hears something good. What's that phrase of like never, you know, kind of deserve what you hear. It's just like quite a wall of text, and so you're just not like shouting the entire time. Yeah, you'd have to find those moments to make people feel, I guess, a little bit like he's still talking about his daughter, and there's some things where he's just like generally upset rather than just always mad blood, even though that's what most of the speech is. But that's a long time to rail at the audience about, I want my daughter's blood for sleeping with her boyfriend, you know.
Well, it does go through interesting little transitions, because he's starting off, the raving is it's unclear what he's raving at.
Right.
And then we have this kneeling and this supplication, which could be on quite a different key. And then he actually explains what's going on. And he's also got other people in the room, and how much are they hearing what he's saying? Because some of it doesn't seem that they must have heard, because they're sort of asking him precisely, what would you like me to do, my lord? The stuff that I've just explained over several lines earlier, that will be good. And the sort of Google Maps direction that he gives us, there's another wall, there's another place, it's a bit overgrown, turn left at the post office, and the moment I quite like. Lynsey.
Yeah, I was struck when Tancred was telling his story about how the initial reaction was one of kind of stone dead amazement, like couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything. It's very interesting to go from, this sort of profound shock, I suppose, is how one would play it realistically, into this kind of bloodthirsty rage that, is going on here. It's very interesting, I think.
I think with this and several other plays that are a bit like this, I just feel that it needs to come with a full-blown physical theatre, element to it, that, everything he's talking about appears on stage around him and is enacted by other people while he's talking about it, so that we have all of these things happening at the same time. And the dumb shows sort of invite that as a response, in terms of, giving us all these things and giving us things to hang our hats on as well, because long speeches can get you can sort of slip off the edges of. Gillian.
Yeah, it's almost like his extreme kind of fantasy of the chaos and like violence he would want to inflict. Maybe that's why people don't necessarily hear it. It could almost be like a fantasy sequence or a dream sequence, and just that kind of like red hot rage, when you kind of imagine awful things that maybe you won't necessarily act on, or maybe he will, I don't know.
Yeah, the spotlight centers down on him the more intense he gets, and then opens out again. Yeah. Eric.
I have 2 points to make. The first one was like that yesterday in the intro we read that, oh yes, this is a lovely winter's tale to educate your daughters and your people by, which is like, what? It's mournful, and there was all this talk about in the introduction how it's a mournful tale for a winter's evening or something, and I know I've gone blurry. The second point was that it's reminding me a lot of Croxton's Sacrament, like that part with the with the putting stuff in the oven and the oven starts bleeding and stuff and all that stuff, or getting their hands stuck to the table, if I remember correctly. It's very graphic and very sort of violent, although this is not as religious, of course, but yeah.
And we haven't seen any of it yet. It's a promissory note to a degree. Yeah, there's a certain element of the Grand Guignol as well, of really getting caught in that. Yeah, in the introduction, now for that weary winter is come upon us, which bringeth with him drooping days and tedious nights. Then I think prosing of some mournful matter, tending to a view of a notable example, will refresh your wits in a gloomy day. So this is to refresh us in winter. That's winter refreshment there. Rachael.
I don't know. I think even maybe that bringing up of the winter goes, I think this is some weird combination of like the Cupid and Psyche myth and Persephone and Pluto myth, because she's just so because Persephone is the goddess of spring and winter. She keeps the time of the seasons going back and forth between these two things. And I think I think it's that little twist that they're kind of combining like these figures together. Yeah, that maybe they have, that's the reason they want you to read it in winter or something.
Well, yeah, but also thinking of other things we get as winter is approaching. You know, we've talked about horror films already. You know, this is put this out at the end of October. That's what it's designed for. I mentioned that cave business underneath somebody's bedroom. I'm sure that's in Sophonisba as well, which has a sort of horror vibe to it. Much later on, that's about 50 years later, and I'm wondering. Just the fact that there is this detail of people escaping via caves or coming in via caves, whether that's a callback from, or there's a source material connection there that I'm missing. Eric?
I was thinking earlier that I would be tempted to play this like in a double bill with like Fulgence and Lucrece, which is the complete opposite, because it's the complete opposite of, it's like the other way. It goes completely, you know, Fulgence and Lucrece sort of... it's like the father actually listening to the daughter, whereas here it's the complete just other end of it.
Oh, that's really good point. Actually, no, I was just reacting to the, you know, it's that's a cheerful comedy, but no, you're absolutely right. Fulgence and Lucrece, Fulgence actually actively asks his daughter, "Who you want to marry? What do you want to do with your life?" and agrees to what she suggests. I mean, it's actually really nice in that sense. And he's very silly as well, and has that debate. And he's much earlier play, but yeah, there's a nice contrast as a double. I really love that idea, actually. Okay, we have any additional thoughts before we move on? Rachael has more thoughts. They're tumbling out, I can tell.
Yeah, one more thought, just because of that cave thing that you brought up. That it's Guiscard comes out of the cave. You know, like, and that's has to do with that horror and that underworld. So maybe, you know, because her first husband isn't really named, maybe he's not a living person, or maybe he's the living dead, or, you know, maybe that has some sort of factor in it, or I'm not sure. There's so many things that there's just enough in this that, like, I feel like I want to reach out for all these other things. Like it has so much to imagine in it, to leave for the audience to imagine.
Yeah, it's really asking for that Freudian touch. I mean, I have to say, when I did pause deliberately because I couldn't resist it, reading the dumb show at the beginning of this act, Tancred cometh forth and draweth Gismunda's curtains. You know, I think if you are enacting that there is a Freudian take that could be had on that, and there's how far is Tancred's obsession with his daughter going? You know, we're being relatively coy about that so far. So I keep trying to tempt people into going further into that, but nobody's biting. Nobody's biting. Okay, Act 4, Scene 3. So Tancred's still on stage. Julio has been sent to waylay. So Renuchio, who was sent off stage earlier, bringeth Gismunda out of her chamber, to whom Tancred saith,
Renuchio, depart, leave us alone.
Exit Renuchio.
Gismund, if either I could stand aside all care of thee, or if thou wouldst have had some care of me, it would now not betide that either thy fault my joy should fade, or by thy folly I should bear the pain thou hast procured. But now 'tis neither I can shun the grief whom thou hast more than slain, nor mayest thou heal nor ease this grievous wound which thou hast given me. That unstained life wherein I joyed, and thought it thy delight. Why hast thou lost it? Can it be restored? Where is thy widowhood? There is thy shame. Gismund, it is no man's nor men's report that have by likely proofs informed me thus. Thou know'st how hardly I could be induced to vex myself and be displeased with thee with flying tales of flattering sycophants. No, there was in us such settled trust of thy chaste life and uncorrupted mind, that if these eyes had not behold thy shame, in vain 10,000 censures could have told that thou once didst Unprince-like make agree with that vile traitor County Palarin, without regard had to thyself or me, unshamefastly to stain thy state and mind. But I, unhappiest, have beheld the same, and seeing it, yet feel the exceeding grief that slays my heart with horror of that thought, which grief commands me to obey my rage. And justice urges some extreme revenge to break the wrongs that have been offered us. By nature that hath locked within my breast 2 lives, the same inclineth me to spare thy blood, and so to keep mine own unspilt. This is that overweening love I bear to the undutiful and undeserved. But for that traitor, he shall surely die, for neither right nor nature doth entreat for him, that wilfully without all awe of gods and men, or of our deadly hate, incurred the just displeasure of his king. And to be brief, I am content to know that for thyself thou canst object to us, why thou shouldst not together with him die, so to assuage the griefs that overthrow thy father's heart.
O King and Father, humbly give her leave to plead for grace that stands in your disgrace. Not that she wrecks this life, for I confess I have deserved, when so it pleaseth you, to die the death, mine honour and my name, as you suppose, disdained with reproach. And well contented shall I meet the stroke that must dissever this detested head from these lewd limbs. But this I wish were known, that now I live not for myself alone. For when I saw that neither my request nor the entreaty of my careful aunt could win your highness' pleasure to our will, then love, heat of the heart, life of the soul, fed by desire, increasing by restraint, would not endure controlment any more, but violently enforced my feeble heart. For who am I, alas, still to resist such endless conflicts, to relent and yield? Therewith I chose him for my lord and peer, Guiscard mine earl, that holds my love full dear. Then if it be so settled in your mind, he shall not live, because he dared to love your daughter, thus I give your grace to know, within his heart there is enclosed my life. Therefore, O Father, if that name may be sweet to your ears, and that we may prevail by name of Father, that you favour us. But otherwise, if now we cannot find that which our false hope did promise us, why then proceed and rid our trembling hearts of these suspicions, since neither in this case his good deserts in service to your grace, which always have been just, nor my desires may mitigate the cruel rage of grief that strains your heart. But that mine earl must die. Then all in vain you ask, what can I say? Why should I live? Sufficeth for my part to say I will not live, and so resolve.
Dost thou so desperate decree thy death?
A dreadless heart delights in such decrees.
A kind of borroweth such unkindly thoughts.
Unkindly thoughts they are to them that live in kindly love.
This I do unto thee.
To take his life, who is my love from me?
Have I then lost thy love?
If he shall lose his life, that is my love.
My love, begone, return to thy chamber.
I will go.
And Gismund departeth to her chamber. Yeah, you get the impression that Gismunda has tried arguing with psychopaths before, and I mean, this is again sort of a modern take on this, what's going on in this scene. But you know, basically, you know that this is what your father's kick is at, and there's no point trying to argue with him. So all you can do is agree and hope for clemency, or for that matter, play a reverse psychology card towards the end of I can yeah, kill me. What else can we do? Because this is really that extreme end of toxic masculinity here, isn't it? This is the this is where you're sort of going, well, you could do this as a modern dress production and make everyone feel you're really, really disturbed in a different way to what you're presenting. You do this in an original costuming, and everyone can stand away from it slightly. But what's going on here is actually really very disturbing. Thoughts from the room about this cheerful tale?
I like how it's the end of the scene is like, go to your room, and it's like it feels like a very sort of not teenage thing, but like sort of return to that chamber. It could be like read as, I control you, therefore you have to go to your room and sit there and think about what you've done, kind of thing. But it could also just be sort of, she's not going to go anywhere. She doesn't really have a choice. But
there's no
yeah,
choice here.
But also, it feels like Gismunda's "I will go" is kind of like, it could be either defiant or it could just be like, I give up, I'll go, kind of.
Yeah, this is an old argument between them. It feels like, and she's just done. Like, she's just battled this her entire life. I think. Overprotective, over interested dad.
Yeah, I mean, we had this earlier in the play from different angles. They tried to make the perfectly reasonable request that, hey, I might like to marry again sometime. There wasn't really in the text, as I recall, that much of actually there was a person in the distance. I could be wrong there, but I don't think we really discussed that yesterday. So this it's just this is never ending, and it's just getting worse.
Does she kind of know to just let him have his rant, and she just knows what to say? I mean, if they have had these kind of arguments before, she kind of meets him with the drama he's bringing to her and then just goes to her room.
Yeah, I feel like you could play it like that. Yeah.
Are the stakes as high for her, or is she just like, okay, he's going to have a huge rant at me, I'm going to say I'm going to die, I'll go to my room?
Yeah.
Oh, I think the stakes are high. I think she knows he's dangerous. Yeah. I mean, there's also the element. Yes, this is the kind of thing you just agree with the crazy person, and hope that you get out the other side, or that he calms down. So there might be much more benign elements to it, from the distant past of this behaviour pattern. But it's all gone horribly, horribly wrong. Eric and Rachael.
I was just going to say that it's interesting how her first appeal is sort of, king and father. So she actually goes for the king identity first and then the father identity. Because, I don't know, it's just interesting sort of to think of it that way. It's like sort of what's more important to him, the fact that he's the king and therefore in power and in control at all times, or that he's the father and still in control, but like not to the same degree, I guess.
Yeah, and it's also, you've got to remember with both of these speeches, it's basically the two people in a room, is that though they're not saying anything, they're wanting to say things to each other while the other one is speaking. They've got to, stop the other person from talking, or, there are reactions that are as important as the text here. These are not just big speeches. There is a dynamic going between these two people in this scene. Rachael, then Lynsey.
Was it ever said how her first husband died? Because
I don't think
maybe
so. He just died.
Maybe this is another throwing a fan theory out there. Maybe Tancred had something to do with this, and maybe this is why this seems like a familiar argument. Maybe there was some sneaky way that he, murdered her first husband, and she has some knowledge of this, and
that's very much a season 4 retcon when they suddenly go, yeah, no, he murdered the first one as well. That's a surprise. He could have done. I would have thought he would have mentioned it, just, oh, not again. Another suitor I have to murder. It was so much hard work the first time round. Now I'm going to have to up the stakes this time. Or he's not dead. He's just out of town. He just paid her off and said, yeah, just send a letter. You died. Being very flippant about a really, really serious subject. Sorry, Lynsey.
Yes, I just wanted to say it's interesting. I got a little shade of how Gismund kind of takes the moral high ground in her speech, which is really the only thing she can say to this sort of tyrant, and he's so nonplussed by her action in regard to that speech that he's just like, go to your room. It's like he can't, he kind of can't deal with any kind of conversation with her about it, which I think makes her quite strong in the face of this, toxic masculinity, I think.
Yes. I mean, it is that situation that, yes, he just has he just can't talk to people, can he? It's all, it's all. Even when he's having a dialogue with his sister the other day, it was just a wall that was up. There was no arguing with him. Any additional thoughts, Gillian, and then Eric? Or are you just holding your hand near your mouth? I'll go straight to Eric.
I'm thinking how cute the cat is.
It is very cute.
Like cat. Gorgeous.
Yes,
nobody's heard anything I just said because they're all looking at the cat. Eric.
I was just gonna say that it's interesting how what you mentioned about that they want to say things and they're reacting to stuff, and because the way it's written, especially Tancred's speech, sort of goes, Gismund, if either could cast aside all care of thee, and then he jumps to Gismund. It is no man, he's insisting on you have to pay attention to me because it's not rumor. I've seen this. I know this. I've seen this with my own eyes. And and you can imagine her trying to interject, and he goes, no, there was in us such settled trust and stuff. And, he just keeps going and going and going. It's relentless.
But both times he's like, I'll be brief. And then, but to sum up, and I'm like, no, you're still going. But that's just King, the self-awareness of, royalty.
Okay, we're going to run the rest of the text to the end of the act now so that we can close on time. Act 4, Scene 4. So Gismund has gone to her room. Tancred is still on stage. Julio with his guard bringeth in the County Palurin prisoner.
If it please your highness, hither have we brought this captive earl as you commanded us, whom, as we were foretold, even there we found, whereby your majesty we were enjoined to watch for him. What more your highness wills, this heart and hand shall execute your best.
Julio, we thank your pains. Ah, Palurin, have we deserved in such traitorous sort that shouldest abuse our kingly courtesies, which we too long in favor have bestowed upon thy false dissembling heart with us? What grief thou therewithal hast thrown on us, what shame upon our house, what dire distress our soul endures cannot be uttered. And durst thou, villain, dare to undermine our daughter's chamber? Durst thou, shameless face, be bold to kiss her? The rest we will conceal. Sufficeth that thou knowest I too well know of thy proceedings and thy private shames. Herein what hast thou won? Thine own content with the displeasure of thy lord and king, the thought whereof, if thou hast had in mind the least remorse of love and loyalty, might have restrained thee from so foul an act. But Palurin, what may I deem of thee, whom neither fear of gods nor love of him, who princely favor hath been thine uprear, could quench the fuel of thy lewd desires? Wherefore content thee that we are resolved, and therefore lay snare to thee with this bait, that thy just death with thine infused blood shall cool the heat and color of our mood.
My lord the king, neither do I mislike your sentence, nor do your smoking sighs reached from the entrails of your boiling heart disturb the quiet of my calm thoughts. For this I feel, and by experience prove, that such is the force and endless might of love, as never shall the dread of carrion death that hath envied our joys invade my breast. For if it may be found a fault in me that evermore hath loved your majesty, likewise to honor and to love your child, if love unto you both may be a fault, but unto her my love exceeds compare, then this hath been my fault, for which I joy that in the greatest lust of all my life I shall submit for her sake to endure the pangs of death. O mighty Lord of love, strengthen thy vassals boldly to receive large wounds into this body for her sake. Then use my life or death, my Lord and King, for your relief to ease your grieved soul. For whether I live or else that I must die to end your pains, I am content to bear, knowing by death I shall bewray the truth of that sound heart which living was her own, and died the life for her that lived mine.
Thine, Palurin? What? Lives my daughter thine? Traitor, thou wrongst me, for she liveth mine. Rather I wish 10,000 sundry deaths than I to live and see my daughter thine. Thine that is dearer than my life to me? Thine who I hope to see an empress? Thine whom I cannot pardon from my sight? Thine unto whom we have bequeathed our crown? Julio, we will that thou inform from us, Renuchio, the captain of our guard, that we command this traitor be conveyed into the dungeon underneath our tower. There let him rest until he be resolved what farther we intend, which to understand we will, Renuchio, to repair to us.
Oh, that I might your majesty entreat with clemency to beautify your seat toward this prince, distressed by his desires, too many, all too strong to captivate.
This is the soundest safety for a king, to cut them off that vex or hinder him.
This have I found the safety of a king, to spare the subjects that do honor him.
Have we been honored by this lecher's lust?
No, but by his devout submission.
Our fortune says we must do what we may.
This is praise worth, not to do what you may.
And may the subject countermand the king?
No, but entreat him.
What shall he decree?
What wisdom shall discern.
Nay, what our word shall best determine, we will not reply. Thou know'st our mind, our heart cannot be eased but with the slaughter of this Palarin.
Now the king hasteth into his palace.
O thou great God, who from thy highest throne has stooped down and felt the force of love, bend gentle ears unto the woeful moan of me, poor wretch, to grant that I require. Help to persuade the same great God that he so far remit his might and slack his fire from my dear lady's kindled heart, that she may hear my death without her hurt. Let not her face, wherein there is as clear a light as in the rising moon, let not her cheeks as red as is the party-colored rose, be paled with the news hereof. And so I yield myself, my seely soul and all, to him, for her, for whom my death shall show I lived. And as I lived, I died her thrall. Grant this, thou thunderer, this shall suffice my breath to vanish in the liquid skies.
And Guiscard is led to prison, and the chorus chorate.
Who doth not know the fruits of Paris' love, nor understand the end of Helen's joy? He may behold the fatal overthrow of Priam's house and of the town of Troy, his death at last and her eternal shame, for whom so many noble knights were slain, so many a duke, so many a prince of fame, bereft his life, and left there in the plain, Medea's armed hand, Elijah's sword, wretched Leander, drenched in the flood, Phyllis, so long that waited for her lord, all these too dearly bought their loves with blood.
He in virtue that his lady serves, ne wills but what unto her honor longs. He never from the rule of reason swerves. He feeleth not the pangs, nay raging throngs of blind Cupid. He lives not in despair, as do his servants, neither spends his days in joy and care, vain hope and throbbing fear, but seeks alway what may his sovereign please in honor. He that thus serves reaps the fruit of his sweet service, and no jealous dread, nor base suspect of aught to let his suit, which causeth oft the lover's heart to bleed, doth fret his mind, or burneth in his breast. He waileth not by day, nor wakes by night, when every other living thing doth rest, nor finds his life or death within her sight.
Remember thou in virtue serve, therefore, thy chaste lady. Beware thou do not love, as whilom Venus did the fair Adone, but as Diana loved the Amazon's son, through whose request the gods to him alone restored new life. The twine that was undone was by the sisters twisted up again. The love of virtue in thy lady's looks, the love of virtue in her learned talk. Thus this love yields matter for eternal books. This love enticeth him abroad to walk, there to invent and write new roundelays of learned conceit, her fancies to allure to vain delights. Such humours he's allays, and sings of virtue and her garments pure.
Desire not of thy sovereign the thing whereof shame may ensue by any mean. nor wish thou aught that may dishonor bring. So while whom did the learned Tuscan serve his fair lady, and their glory was their end? Such are praises lovers done deserve, whose service doth to virtue and honor tend.
And that is the end of Act 4, and the slightly repressed chorus, I feel. They do have a tendency to just sort of go, don't fall in love, don't love's terrible. Any kind of imposition on your chastity is bad, and desire is awful. Don't desire things. That's bad. I'm not a fan of the chorus generally. It has to be said. I'm not a fan of their overall positioning. I'm not a fan of choruses in plays that appear directly at the end of acts on a structural level, because they remind the audience of what time it is. Because that's the end of Act 1 now. That means there's another. Okay, so if Act 2 is the same length as Act 1, so there's, oh my God, we're going to be here till 11. It's that kind of thing that slightly takes you out of it. So I have these issues with choruses. Obviously, if they're done well, it's fine. So Guiscard is not looking good for him. Not looking good for him. Did his line of reasoning really work? I mean, did it even have a chance of working? It didn't convince me particularly, I have to say. It wasn't, it was a slightly different tack. Thoughts from the room on this, our final bit of text for today. I've generally liked Christopher Hatton's work so far. I think it's been quite florid, but also quite dramatic at the same time. So it's managed to get the best of both worlds. Lynsey.
I just feel that I mean, just on a kind of listening to it there without examining it more closely, that Guiscard takes the same kind of has the same argument as Gismunda, really. They're sort of mirror images of each other, and his version of it is every bit as effective as hers.
Yeah, everybody's crashing against that brick wall, aren't they? They're just throwing themselves at it, and nothing is sticking.
It's interesting that the writer gives the kind of plea for mercy to the sidekick, to Julio, who also falls on deaf ears.
Right. Who I thought was just a sycophant at first, and I realized this writer gave him a little agency. I kind of enjoyed that, because I was like, all right, Julio, right? But I was like, oh, okay, you have something to say. I'm going to try.
Yeah, and honestly, it's not a good career move to question the king, because
really.
we tend to get murdered.
Right.
I mean, we don't know yet whether Julio's going to make it through the play. But frankly, if it's in a slightly later play for a playhouse, it's dead. He's so dead.
So dead. And it was Julio and I want to say Renuchio, but it's not Renuchio. The other one.
Renuchio. I've been calling him Renucula in my head.
Were they? I might be getting this completely wrong. Were they the two that came on with Guiscard, and he sent them away immediately?
No, they came on with Tancred, or did they? No, did they? No, you might be right. Hang on.
They came on, and he's like, "Leave, depart. I need to walk alone, and then think about my love."
Yeah, they did come on with So
maybe this is an act of friendship as well on Julio's part.
Yeah. If
the audience have remembered better than I did that actually happened.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, actually. Maybe they're all friends, and that there's an interesting other dynamic going on here. That the king's ordered it. Who's going to argue? Well, he's going to have a go. And yeah, Eric.
There was one line that Tancred said that actually made me think, like maybe he actually has a point, which is kind of like scary,
You
because he
agreed with
goes,
Tancred for a whole line.
I know, right? But he goes, thine unto whom we have bequeathed our crown, which is basically like, so like we've given, even if you don't marry her or whatever, and you just love her, you're sort of manipulating my daughter into loving you for the crown. If you read it that way, then it makes it a lot more interesting and a lot more sort of, it gives it a lot more dimension. Obviously, he's being paranoid, but I mean, sort of, at least in the context of the play. But it's just very sort of, I don't know, if you think of it that way, it's just sort of, actually, maybe he's right, maybe not. He's not. But...
He's not. No.
The rest we'll conceal.
Yes. Okay, final thoughts from the room. We're into extra time. I'll go to Lynsey first, who lurked for a percentage of the other day. I don't know how much you caught the other day. But yeah, the sense of the way this, let's say, this part work, because it's going between 5 different authors. Each has an act each. It's also been semi-revised on some level, I think relatively minorly at this stage, by the 5th author. Yeah, how are you finding the piece and its potential, shall we say?
I think it could be quite, you were talking about, physical theatre sort of things before, and I was imagining, fire juggling and giant boa constrictors with the Furies and that kind of thing. And I think there's huge amount of scope for that kind of thing. And then you've got these rather po-faced Coreans who are sort of saying, no, all of that. I think it could be a lot of fun. I'm sort of enjoying it, really. I think it's got potential.
Yeah, it is one of those plays where it's inviting us to imagine things around it. It's not like a text where it just lands on the table and go, this is a play that you can just do. Just hand it to some actors and off they go. This is one that's saying, well, let's play around with it. It's inviting things. And I like that. I always like that in a text. Lisa, you've dived into these 2 acts. What do you think of the show so far?
The 2 chapters, even though I heard different voices, it was of a piece. So I thought maybe having the 5 authors might be a good thing. Different angles, but it still feels like a connected story, which I like. And so, yeah, I'd be interested in how someone tackles that king character. Like, how far do we go into like gross aspects? Is he ever sympathetic? Kind of not, but like how you would play that. It's a very interesting script.
Eric, you were here yesterday. How's the journey for you?
I feel traumatized. No, well, it's just, I don't know, thinking of it in the context of other plays that we've done as well. It's like sort of very, very dark and sort of, we've seen similar plays, but I guess with people coveting what they cannot have and therefore deciding to kill the thing that they can't have or the person that they can't have. I don't know. I've also found myself thinking about Galatea, which is very, very like, because like the sort of madness of love thing that they had going on in that one. But this is just like the other end of it, much darker end of it. I don't know. It just, yeah.
Yeah, because love can be a positive force or a negative force. In this and Dido, Queen of Carthage, love leads to some really bad stuff going down. Bad stuff goes down in Sappho and Phao as well. Love doesn't exactly make anyone happy. But then you've got other ones where Cupid is a lot more playful and is maybe more tricksy, but is not quite so. Cupid coming into the house just brings all these other demons in and furies and I have to say what I'm seeing is a really suburban house set, but that it just gets slow. Blood comes out the walls. I'm just seeing that it's slowly getting taken over and okay, it's the king of the household in Tancred. and that there is actually a domestic psychodrama going on in the centre of this that is actually very relevant and disturbing. Yeah, plus lots of physical theatre and things. It really it's inviting my imagination, which is probably not a good idea. Gillian, again, diving mid flow.
Yeah, I really enjoyed kind of getting into the world of it and just kind of picking up briefly what happened previously. Yeah, I think it could all be just so theatrical, to be honest. Like, some of the images in my head are things like out of a Disney film, those kind of horror, like, makes me think of like just some of those Disney baddies with the, like, is it the Hunchback of Notre Dame, where he's got all the flames around him and, he's conjuring images of hell and stuff. So it could be kind of like, you could almost do a light-hearted villain like that, but also you could make it really dark and really twisted. I just think, yeah, there's a lot of scope for like the right director and the right, if it was being put on, the right kind of creative team to just make something really interesting of it.
And of course, we could pull back and just present it in a much more straightforward way. I think it still would work. I think it's got to be a dark room and it's got to be very focused. And I think Lisa's point earlier, it was Lisa's, I think, said earlier, that the it does still feel like a unified whole, even though it is different and flows between. And Rachael, I think, was saying something similar earlier when you were talking about, this act is doing the floral stuff, and then we're going to get to the drama in a bit. And I think that's played out very, very accurately. Act 1 is that sort of very poetic setup, and then plot sort of happens in Act 2. Same sort of happened with Act 3 and Act 4. So, yeah, Rachael, final thoughts?
I like it. I like it so far. I mean, that's all I really have to say, because I think I've said so much, and there's so much that can be projected from an audience's perspective onto this, from an actor's perspective onto this. It gives you just enough that your brain is just craving to fill in all the gaps in it. Like, if there was, like, in some things you feel like there's plot holes, but in this there's like, it doesn't seem, it's not that they're plot holes, it's just things that you want to insert your own interpretation into. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. I have to say that thinking of a director, I'd like to throw out this. There's something very Lynchian about this, and I don't mean because of the sprites and the sort of weird supernatural things coming out of the floor. I mean because it demands a certain kind of heightened acting style that looks a bit naturalistic, but isn't. And it's something that Lynch does for camera really nicely, of this really intense emotion. But it's not over the top and big, or a lot of the times it isn't. It's just really intense and really there, and I'm seeing that very much for Tancred. Does anyone have any additional thoughts to throw in before we close the session? Eric.
Well, also just the speeches. If you take them as like sort of take them out of the play and use them as monologues, they're really, really good to sink your teeth into. even though I'm not an actor, it just feels like there's a lot to play with there.
Oh, Rachael again. Or were you just waving to agree, or waving away the cat? Anyway, right, so we have one act left to go. We've got not only one act left to go, we've got sort of variations or additions from the original version to play with. I'm actually going to be maybe issuing people with additional text from what we've already got. To add to that, I'm going to try and see if we can have as much material from both versions of the play tomorrow as I can, but no promises on that at all. Thanks to everyone in the room who's still here and hasn't had to rush away early, because we all have lives. Thank you very much, and goodbye.